Welcome back to the Wisdom of the Christian Mystics series. Today, we're really opening up something special, a spiritual treasury, you could say.
We are. It's a work from nearly 450 years ago, but it feels incredibly relevant. It's maybe the most, definitive blueprint of the soul's journey toward God ever written down.
We are talking, of course, about St. Teresa of Avila's The Interior Castle, sometimes called the Mansions. And for you listening, this isn't just, dry theology.
Not at all. Think of it like a map, a really detailed room-by-room guide to your own consciousness, your own spiritual growth. And it's charted by someone who, seems to have walked the whole path herself.
Right. And the authority behind this, it's quite something. The speed she wrote it is fascinating. She started in 1577 on Trinity Sunday.
Yeah, and while life interrupted her, the actual writing time, incredibly short. Sources say she finished this huge, complex work in maybe 4 weeks of actual writing.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the inspiration, doesn't it? People around her said she often wrote right after receiving Holy Communion, just completely absorbed. Sometimes she'd even fall into a trance mid-sentence. Right. So this text, it didn't come from, poring over books in a library. It feels like it flowed from direct illuminated experience that gives it this unique weight as a guide to the inner life.
Absolutely. So that's our task today, really, to unpack this incredible structure, this sacred architecture. We'll try to move room by room through these 7 mansions of the soul.
And hopefully find some practical guidance, some real psychological insights that St. Teresa embedded in here.
Yeah.
It's all about that journey towards divine love, towards knowledge.
It really does offer such a stunning perspective on what human dignity, our potential, even considering, our struggles.
It's profoundly encouraging.
Okay. Before we step inside this castle, just a reminder, if you find this exploration helpful, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Clicking that notification bell helps too, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments as we get started. Right then. Let's dive into that foundational image, because the very first thing St. Teresa gives us is this vision of just immense splendor. It really shifts how you might see yourself.
It does. The vision she received was of the soul. Imagine a beautiful globe made of crystal clear crystal, shaped like a castle inside, with 7 main rooms or mansions, leading one after the other.
Okay, a crystal castle.
But the absolutely crucial part, the foundation of it all, is who lives there. The King of Glory, God himself, resides right in the center, in the 7th mansion.
That's powerful straight away. It speaks to the inherent worth of every single person, doesn't it? No matter where they are spiritually, the divine is already within.
Exactly. And this king, he radiates this incredible light, this brilliancy that shines out from the center and just illuminates and, adorns the whole structure.
So the mansions aren't dark initially.
No, they're designed for light. And she says the closer the rooms are to that center, the more light they naturally receive. The soul is precious by its very nature. She compares it to a magnificent diamond, or some incredibly valuable jewel.
Why crystal or diamond, do you think? What's the significance of that material, that geometry?
Well, crystal suggests clarity, doesn't it? Purity. The potential to perfectly reflect the light shining from God at the center. And diamond. Well, that suggests something of immense value, something durable, maybe something whose brilliance is often hidden until it's cleaned. And that leads right into her big lament, really. She says our greatest tragedy, our misfortune, is that we just don't know this inner beauty. We're ignorant of our own divine origin. We look everywhere else for God, for happiness, except within.
It's like we're looking at all the wrong places, a total misdirection of our energy.
Completely. She says we focus all our care, all our attention on the body, which in her analogy is just the coarse setting of the diamond, or maybe the rough outer walls of the castle.
Just the container, not the treasure.
Right. And this obsession with the outside, the temporary stuff, while ignoring the incredible palace within, she actually calls it an unbelievable stupidity. The soul is magnificent, designed for God, and we treat it like it's nothing.
Okay, so that's the ideal, the inherent splendor. But then the vision gets, frankly, quite terrifying when she contrasts it with the effect of sin. If the soul is this crystal globe, what happens when mortal sin enters?
The change is immediate, and it's absolute. That brilliant, clear crystal castle, it instantly becomes opaque, dark as coal, she says. And it starts to give off this intolerable odor, a stench of corruption.
But the king is still there.
Yes, that's crucial. God doesn't just abandon the soul unless the soul completely wills it. He's still present, substantially. But the light, It's totally blocked, obscured.
And what about the areas just outside the castle walls?
Those outer precincts, they represent the world's temptations, the sins. She describes that area as being full of, well, nasty creatures. Toads and vipers and other venomous animals.
Sure.
And when mortal sin happens, it's like opening the gate. Those venomous things, impurity, vice, all of it, they get inside the castle, into those formerly pristine rooms.
So this isn't just abstract theory for her.
Not at all. She says this vision was given to her directly, like holding up a mirror. It was meant to inspire a healthy fear of offending God, to show just how ugly and, well, repulsive the soul becomes when it throws away grace and lets that darkness in. It's a powerful push towards humility, towards vigilance.
Okay, that image of the dark-infested castle, it really sets the scene for why we need to get back inside towards the light. And the only way in, she says, is through the gate, which is prayer.
Yes, prayer is the entrance.
So let's step into those first rooms, mansions, the first, tes, and as in their then. These seem to require a lot of active effort from the soul. Starting with mansion the first, what's it like there on the outskirts?
Mansion the first. Well, the souls there are still very much caught up in the world. They've technically entered the gate. Maybe they pray occasionally, a few times a month, she suggests. But their focus, their heart, it's still fundamentally outside,
Outside.
on earthly things.
Their treasure is elsewhere.
Exactly. So they're easily distracted. Their
Right.
prayer is shallow, unfocused. They're constantly looking back out, as it were.
She paints a pretty grim picture of life without regular prayer, doesn't she?
Oh, absolutely stark. She compares souls who don't have that habit of prayer to bodies palsied and lame. Like they can't use their hands and feet spiritually. They can't really move towards God or practice virtue effectively.
So prayer isn't optional.
It's the indispensable gate. Mandatory. Without it, she says, they just stay outside habitually, living with the reptiles and other creatures. They're inside the outer walls, maybe, but still in constant danger because they haven't truly committed to living within the castle, protected.
Okay, so moving inwards then to mansion the second. Now these souls are praying regularly. They've crossed the threshold. So why are they still relatively far from the center? What's the struggle here?
They've made a start, yes. They practice prayer. They see the importance of moving deeper in. But their commitment is shaky. They understand the castle's beauty, theoretically, but they often lack the real resolve to avoid occasions of sin, especially sins involving, say, social pressures or worldly reputation.
The pull of the world is still strong.
Very strong. And this makes Mansion the Second a very perilous state. It's defined by fierce attacks from the devil, this constant, exhausting war of the flesh against the spirit. You feel pulled in two directions. Grace pulling you inward, the world and old habits pulling you back out.
It sounds draining. What's her practical advice for surviving, for winning this initial conflict?
The first essential, perseverance. Just keep going. Don't give up on prayer. The soul have to realize deep down that there's neither peace nor security outside the castle walls.
So make a firm decision.
Yes, make a radical decision. Withdraw from bad company, from situations that reliably lead you into sin, and crucially learn to trust faith over, visible worldly rewards or approval.
Easier said than done, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. She also stresses getting advice from experienced spiritual guides here. Because the devil is clever. He'll disguise his attacks, maybe making the spiritual path seem impossibly hard, or suggesting your efforts are just excessive, fanatical. You can't be casual about this stage.
It demands real spiritual grit. Okay, then we get to Mansion the Third, and this one always strikes me as potentially the most confusing because the souls here seem, well, quite virtuous, yet they're stalled.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. Mansion the Third is the stage of the well-ordered life. These souls are genuinely commendable. They actively try to avoid even small sins, venial sins. They practice self-denial, penance. They meditate diligently. They're charitable. They manage their lives, their households responsibly. Outwardly and even inwardly to a large extent, they seem to be on the right path, the safe road.
So if they're doing all that right, what's the snag? Why aren't they progressing further? What's blocking them?
Often they experience great spiritual dryness, aridities, she calls them. Long periods where prayer feels barren, empty. And Teresa pinpoints the core issue. It's usually a subtle unwillingness to surrender everything God asks.
Everything.
Everything. She uses that powerful story of the rich young man in the gospel. He kept all the commandments, he was virtuous, but when Christ asked him to give up his attachments, his wealth, he went away sorrowful.
So these souls are holding something back.
Exactly. They're clinging to something subtle. Maybe it's their comfort zone, their reputation, maybe even an attachment to their specific way of being virtuous. They haven't quite given God complete control, full dominion over their will.
That sounds incredibly hard to spot in yourself. How do you distinguish between genuine humility and this subtle holding back, especially when you're trying to be good?
This is where her psychological insight is just brilliant. She says this stage is often hampered by a kind of false humility. And it's tricky. It's not just about being timid. It's actually a hidden form of pride that cares more about what people think than what God wants.
How does that show up?
It might manifest as these weak, hesitant thoughts disguised as prudence, like, oh, I shouldn't aim too high spiritually. People might think I'm trying to be a saint, or extremes are bad. I should just stay moderate. They fear the cost of total surrender, maybe the cost to their reputation or their comfort.
So they're afraid of looking too holy.
In a way, yes. They're prioritizing how they appear or their own sense of manageability over God's call to perfection.
So the solution isn't just more effort, but a change in perspective.
Exactly. The remedy, she says, is to stop looking inward so much at your own faults or limitations, which just feeds those timid thoughts. Instead, fix your eyes resolutely on Christ, our only good, and on his saints. Look outward to perfection.
And trust God for the strength.
Yes. Recognize that any real strength, any true progress comes from God alone, not our own pathetic efforts. Except that any good we do is actually his work in us. That's true humility.
You also mentioned the devil attacks subtly here. She calls it a file, secretly and silently wearing its way. How does that work, this high-level deception?
It often looks like excessive zeal. For instance, a person in Mansion the Third, trying hard to be perfect, might become hypercritical. They start picking apart every little fault they see in others, maybe in their family or fellow parishioners or sisters in a convent, and they tell themselves they're doing it out of zeal for perfection or upholding standards.
But it's actually destructive.
Yes, because St. Teresa is crystal clear. The devil's real aim with his filing is to cool the charity and lessen the mutual affection among people, to destroy love and unity.
That's such a core Teresian point, isn't it? That true perfection isn't about judging others, but about love.
Absolutely fundamental. She insists true perfection consists entirely in charity, love of God, and practical, self-sacrificing love of neighbor. If you do every penance imaginable, meditate for hours, but you lack that real active charity, then all is lost, she says. The whole point of the spiritual life, the whole reason for entering the castle, is to learn how to truly live out those two great commandments. Love God, love your neighbor.
Okay, that focus on charity and total surrender really sets us up for Mansion the Fourth. This feels like the absolute hinge point of the whole journey. Because up to Mansion the Third, progress seemed to depend so much on the soul's own active work, meditating, reading, denying oneself. What changes so fundamentally here?
The fourth mansion marks this critical shift. The journey becomes definitively supernatural. It's no longer just the soul striving. Now God begins to act directly on the soul. He starts infusing graces, consolations, in a way that doesn't depend on the soul's own labor.
So the initiative shifts.
Precisely. The soul moves from primarily acting to being acted upon. And interestingly, she notes the poisonous reptiles' temptations rarely get in here. And if they do, paradoxically, resisting them actually earns the soul more merit.
And this shift from effort to reception is where she uses that famous analogy of the two fountains. This seems crucial.
Oh, it's vital. Absolutely vital for understanding the change. The first fountain represents the kind of prayer common in mansions first to third. She calls it sensible devotion. Think of like a garden basin getting water piped in through lots of aqueducts, lots of human engineering.
Okay.
That water, that devotion, is obtained by intense effort, thought, meditation, and the labor of our minds. It's noisy, requires machinery, it's frankly hard work, and often feels well forced. It causes commotion.
The soul is digging the channels, laying the pipes itself, but the flow might be intermittent, unreliable.
Your own effort causes the noise, and you can get spiritually exhausted or dry because, well, human effort is limited. But the second fountain, this represents the prayer of Mansion the Fourth, the divine consolations, or the prayer of quiet. Here the water flows directly from the source itself, which signifies God.
No pipes needed.
No pipes, no human engineering. It just wells up from within.
Yeah.
And the experience is totally different. It's noiseless, calm. It brings this deep peace, calm, and sweetness in the inmost depths of our being. It just floods the soul with grace. And the soul knows with certainty that this is a pure gift. It's unmerited. God gives it when he chooses, and it brings conviction of his presence that no amount of mental effort could ever produce before.
That sounds wonderful, but this is often where people get really confused, isn't it? Especially about the mind wandering. If God is granting this deep inner quiet, why does the imagination sometimes seem to go into overdrive? It feels like you've lost the prayer completely.
Yes, this is a huge point of confusion, and Teresa offers such helpful clarity here. She makes a very sharp technical distinction, but a necessary one. She says the imagination and the understanding, these lower, more restless parts of the mind are like rushing waterfalls, or maybe birds singing and whistling annoyingly in the background.
Okay.
We tend to mistake the activity of these lower faculties for the state of the will, which she sees as the innermost core of the soul, the part that loves and chooses.
So the chaos isn't necessarily in the deepest part, it's peripheral.
Precisely. Your core, your will, can be profoundly united with God in this deep quiet, holding on to Him firmly in love. Even while your imagination is off chasing butterflies or, as she says, battling venomous creatures in the castle's outer areas.
So don't panic about the wandering thoughts.
Exactly. Don't be disturbed by them. If your will remains fixed on God, remains in that state of loving surrender, the soul might actually be gaining merit by letting the lower faculties run wild while the higher part stays united. Understanding this separation of faculties is key to navigating passive prayer.
That is incredibly liberating for anyone who struggles with contemplative prayer. So if intense mental work isn't the main driver anymore, what is the core lesson of Mansion the Fourth for making progress?
She brings it back to the absolute center, to make rapid progress and to reach the mansions. It is not so essential to think much as to love much. That's the quote.
Love much, not think much.
Right. The focus shifts entirely. It's not about the quantity of your thoughts or how perfectly you follow a meditation technique. It's about the quality of your love, the depth of your surrender. If God grants you feelings of devotion, embrace them. Don't push them aside just because you haven't finished your scheduled thinking time. Love, receptivity, that takes priority over method now.
With the will now more surrendered, and having tasted that prayer of quiet, we arrive at Mansion V. Here the union gets so deep, Teresa calls it the prayer of union, or even a spiritual sleep. What happens in this state? What makes it so intense?
This is, yeah, like a spiritual sleep or maybe a partial trance. It's often quite brief, she says, sometimes less than half an hour. But during that time, the soul is united with God's very essence in a temporary way.
And the faculties.
The external senses, the intellect, the imagination, they're suspended. They're asleep, as she puts it. And what makes this state feel so secure is her assurance that if the union is genuinely from God, the devil simply cannot get in. He can't interfere, can't even understand this mystery.
God seals it off.
It seems so. God is joined so closely to the very core, the essence of the soul, that the union is protected. It's a secret, she says, so deep that even the soul itself can't fully grasp it while it's happening.
And this profound experience, this sort of mystical death to the world, this is where she brings in that incredible metaphor.
The silkworm and the butterfly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's probably her most famous analogy, and it perfectly captures the transformation required.
How does it work?
Okay, so the soul starts as the silkworm. It diligently feeds on the leaves of meditation, prayer, good works, that's mansions the eye through fee, the active effort. Then when it's ready, it has to spin its cocoon.
The cocoon.
And she explicitly says, this cocoon is Christ. The soul has to enclose itself in Him, undergo this mystical death, a death to its old self, its worldly attachments. It has to die in Christ.
And then?
Then it emerges, not as a worm anymore, but as a lovely little white butterfly, utterly transformed. And Teresa really stresses the difference. The soul is now as different from what it was as is the white butterfly from the repulsive caterpillar. It barely recognizes its old self. And it knows absolutely that this transformation wasn't its own doing. It was God's work, a pure gift. The silkworm's efforts were a necessary preparation, but the change itself is grace.
So this brief, intense union, it leaves lasting marks. How does this butterfly live in the world now? What are the effects?
Well, first off, the butterfly can no longer be content to crawl. It wants to fly. 3 key effects usually follow. First, this almost insatiable desire for great crosses, for suffering, for severe penances. Which sounds strange, but the soul now understands that hardship is easy when God is helping it.
Okay.
Second, an overwhelming zeal for God's honor, for His will to be done. And third, a complete detachment from worldly pleasures, from earthly comforts. All the previous labors seem like nothing compared to this burning desire to fly for God, to serve Him.
But the journey still isn't finished, is it? She warns that this state isn't constant bliss. In fact, new and even more severe trials often follow. Why? Why more suffering after such a profound union?
It's a crucial point, because the union here in Mansion V, profound as it is still temporary. It's preparatory. The soul is still in the body, still needs refining. The suffering continues, even intensifies, confirming her point that in one way or another we must carry the cross all our lives.
So the trials serve a purpose.
Yes. They ensure the soul keeps growing in humility, keeps gaining merit, purifies any last bits of self-love, and actually increases its capacity to receive the final permanent union later on. She warns that if someone claims to reach this stage and then just lives in effortless peace with no more struggles, well, they're probably either deceived by the devil or maybe just confusing spiritual grace with, say, physical weakness or a quiet temperament. Real growth involves the cross.
Right. So Mansion the Sixth, she calls this the stage of spiritual espousals, like a betrothal before the final marriage. It involves deeper, more frequent visits from God, but paradoxically, it's also the time of the most intense suffering yet. Why does getting closer mean more pain?
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? But it's because the soul is being prepared, really rigorously prepared, for that final, permanent indwelling of God in Mansion the Seventh. And that requires absolute purity, total detachment. So the suffering here is like the final, agonizing purification. It purges the very last, deepest imperfections. And in doing so, it stretches the soul's capacity for love and deepens its humility.
And these trials, they come from both outside and inside, you said. Let's start with the exterior ones. They sound absolutely brutal, socially and emotionally.
Oh, they are. The exterior trials often involve intense persecution.
No.
And not necessarily from enemies, but sometimes from good people, friends, family, even religious colleagues. They might accuse the soul of being under a delusion or trying to pass for a saint or being tricked by the devil.
So the soul is genuinely advancing, but completely misunderstood.
Exactly. Leading to profound loneliness, spiritual isolation, intense anxiety. And this misunderstanding, this persecution, can sometimes last for the rest of the soul's life. It powerfully cements its detachment from human approval.
Wow. Okay, and the interior trials, this is where we hear about some extraordinary, almost painful graces, like the wound of love. What is that?
The wound of love, yes, it's a key example of the intense interior suffering in this mansion. The soul suddenly receives this blow, she calls it, as from a fiery dart, right in its deepest center. It's not physical pain, though it has physical effects. It's an agonizing spiritual torment.
What kind of torment?
Primarily, an excruciating grief over being separated, even temporarily, from God, coupled with this overwhelming, unbearable desire for that final union. It's the pain of intense love longing for its object.
And you mentioned physical effects.
Yes, the intensity is often physically overwhelming. Teresa describes the experience leaving the body feeling like its limbs are disjointed, the pulse becomes feeble, the person is left utterly exhausted, body and soul. The spiritual pain is so acute, she says, that you don't even notice any physical discomfort you might have.
That sounds terrifying, yet strangely beautiful.
It is. It's this paradoxical experience that confirms the soul is deeply loved by God, yet simultaneously being prepared, stretched for that final giving away of self.
It's also in this high-stakes mansion, Mansion the Sixth, that the soul often receives the most extraordinary supernatural communications, things like locutions, divine speech, and raptures or ecstasies. Given the intensity, the danger of deception here must be huge, especially with hearing voices. What's Teresa's test for genuine locutions?
Absolutely, the risk is very high. Locutions are words perceived by the soul. They can seem internal, intellectual, or even sometimes external. It's easy to mistake your own thoughts, or worse, demonic suggestions, for God's voice. Teresa's test is very specific, very practical. They're operative power.
Operative power, meaning?
Meaning the words must do what they say, instantly and effectively. For example, if the soul is drowning in crippling fear, darkness, or anxiety, and it hears interiorly words like, "Be not troubled," or "It is I, be not afraid."
Yes.
If those words are truly from God, that single sentence will immediately substantially banish the fear. It will fill the soul with light, profound peace, and unshakable certainty. This happens even when, say, advice from wise spiritual directors or theologians has totally failed to bring comfort. The words work. They are substantial, effective, bringing undeniable relief. That's how you distinguish them from wishful thinking or deception.
It's a very clear test. And raptures, ecstasies,
Yep.
where the soul feels physically transported.
Yes, these are the really vehement flights of the spirit, she calls them. The soul feels suddenly, sometimes violently, snatched away. The external senses completely shut down. You're transported mentally, spiritually to a very different region, shown a light so unearthly, and profound divine mysteries are revealed.
How does the soul know it's real?
She says the experience is often unmistakable, like a bullet shot from a gun. It's sudden, rapid, powerful, too forceful, too transformative to be just imagination. And they leave behind indelible effects. Deep self-knowledge, humility, and this unshakable conviction that all the honors and riches of the world are just filth in comparison to the briefest glimpse of divine reality.
Okay, now, for souls receiving these incredible graces, wounds of love, locutions, raptures, Teresa gives a really crucial warning. It almost sounds contradictory given the high level of prayer. What is it?
It's probably the single most important warning for souls at this advanced stage. She insists, absolutely insists, that they must never neglect meditation on the sacred humanity of Christ, his life, his passion, his concrete presence in the Gospels.
Why, if they're receiving direct communication, why go back to basics?
Because, she says, to stop contemplating Christ's humanity is to deliberately lose your guide. His humanity is the way, the light, and the door to the Father. Even when experiencing the most sublime, abstract, mystical graces, the soul must stay grounded in the reality of the Incarnation. Otherwise, the risk of spiritual pride, of getting subtly derailed, of losing the path altogether, is immense. Christ himself, in his humanity, is the anchor.
So, having navigated the intense trials and extraordinary graces of Mansion the Sixth, we finally arrive, the seventh mansion, the highest state attainable in this life, spiritual marriage. How does the soul typically enter this final, permanent state?
It often begins with a very specific, profound spiritual encounter. Frequently, she says, it's an imaginary vision, meaning perceived with the spiritual senses of the glorified Christ, perhaps as he appeared after the resurrection. This often happens after receiving Holy Communion. It acts like the formal sealing of the union.
A spiritual wedding ceremony, in a way. And is there a specific message, a kind of covenant given in that encounter?
Yes. Christ communicates this understanding to the soul, sometimes in words, sometimes just infused knowledge that from now on she was to care for his affairs as though they were her own and he would care for hers. It's this mutual agreement, this permanent bond. The relationship shifts from the engagement of Mansion the Sixth to a lasting, secure spiritual marriage.
So, what is life like inside this final room, this presence chamber, as she calls it? Is it just continuous, unbroken ecstasy?
No, not exactly continuous ecstasy in the way we might imagine. It's more about an unalterable peace and a secure, permanent sense of God's indwelling. The soul feels constantly swallowed up, as she puts it, in the flowing river of God's presence. The king is always home in his central chamber.
So, peace even amidst storms.
Yes, that's the key. Even if huge storms, trials, difficulties, temptations rage in the outer mansions the sixth, she says nothing disturbs the profound peace in the center, in the seventh mansion. The soul knows beyond any doubt that God is abiding within it. That connection is now permanent as long as the soul doesn't deliberately commit serious sin. It's like the peace Christ gave the apostles after the resurrection, deep, steady, unshakable.
And the transformation of the soul itself is now complete. The butterfly has finally found its resting place.
Exactly. The little butterfly, she says, has finally died with the greatest joy. Its old self, the caterpillar self, is gone. And St. Paul's words really define this state. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me.
And the primary effect of that?
The absolutely key overriding effect is profound self-forgetfulness. And coupled with that, a complete unwavering focus on God's honor and his will. The soul literally stops worrying about itself. It stops longing for heavenly rewards or fearing suffering for its own sake. Its only desire is to live longer, even suffer heavier crosses, if that could bring even the tiniest bit more honor to God. Its greatest joy becomes serving him and wanting his glory.
This total self-forgetfulness, it leads directly to what you call the Martha and Mary imperative.
Yeah.
Now, Teresa was writing when there was a big debate, which is better, the active life of service, Martha, or the contemplative life of prayer, Mary? What's her final answer from the perspective of the seventh mansion?
Her conclusion was actually quite revolutionary for her time. She comes down firmly on this. The true purpose, the ultimate goal of all prayer, even the highest mystical prayer, is not personal enjoyment or sitting in continuous contemplation. It's about gaining the strength to serve God actively in the world.
So the highest union leads to the most practical service.
Precisely. The fruits, the proof of genuine spiritual marriage are always, without exception, good works, service, love in action.
So it's not either Martha or Mary.
No, it's both and. Both Martha action and Mary contemplation must work together to entertain the Lord, as she puts it. The most perfect work the soul in union can do, the ultimate fruit of this marriage, is leading other souls to Christ. And how? Primarily through the powerful example of its own fervent charity and self-sacrificing love towards neighbors.
A love of neighbor as the proof of love of God.
Absolutely. She states it bluntly. If we lack that practical, down-to-earth charity towards others, then all is lost. The soul isn't truly united to God, no matter how many raptures or sweet feelings it thinks it has. The litmus test is always, how completely does the soul now dedicate its life to serving others out of love for God?
So the best food we can offer Christ isn't our mystical experiences, but the souls we help bring to him through our love.
That's the final, practical, unmistakable test of authenticity, right through every stage of the castle.
Well, that was quite a journey. Through all 7 mansions, charting that incredible transformation of the soul from being stuck outside the walls, besieged by those venomous creatures, right into the inner chamber, the place of permanent spiritual marriage.
Yeah, the caterpillar truly becoming the butterfly. It's an amazing map she gives us.
It really is. But the foundation, as you've stressed, right from Mansion I all the way to 7th, it seems to rest on just 2 things.
Yeah.
Humility and practical love.
Always, she brings it back again and again.
Yeah.
We have to keep seeking to be the least of all and the slave of others. That downward path of humility is the only way upward into the castle.
And the surest sign we actually love God isn't the spectacular stuff, not the raptures or consolations, but simply acquiring virtue day by day and practicing that genuine, often difficult, self-sacrificing love for the people around us.
That's the proof. That's the sign the king is truly reigning in the center of your castle.
And St. Teresa leaves us with this incredible assurance, doesn't she? That if we just try to follow this blueprint, if we strive to surrender our will to God's, he will give us far more than we could ever even imagine or know how to desire.
It's a promise woven through the whole book.
Which brings us, I suppose, to a final thought for you listening right now. If you recognized yourself somewhere in this journey today, maybe in the dryness of Mansion the Third, or the struggles and warfare of Mansion the Second, or even just feeling stuck outside the gates, what's one small, concrete step of surrender you could take today? Maybe a difficult act of charity you've been avoiding, or letting go of some subtle attachment, some comfort you're clinging to. What step could you take to move just a little bit closer from the outer rooms toward the center of your own soul's castle?
That decision, that choice to move inward, even just slightly, that's the constant invitation St. Teresa offers us, isn't it?
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us for this exploration in our Wisdom of the Christian Mystic series. If you found this conversation valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you'd like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell, too.